Well, hello, friends. Hello and welcome. Welcome to yours and mine, Cozy Corner. My name is Amanda, and on this channel, we talk about books, and more books. Hey, guys. Well, I am so happy to have you guys here with me today. Today, we're going to talk about The Fourth Child. The Fourth Child by Miss Jessica Winter. This, you can see from the title, is going to be a deep dive. This is one of the books that I got from the Goodwill. And I tell you what, when I read the synopsis of this book, I knew immediately that this was a book that I was going to either do a deep dive on or that I was definitely going to have to annotate because I just had a gut feeling that this book was just going to we were going to need to have an in-depth conversation about this book. And sure enough, turns out I was correct. So I don't know how long this video is going to be. I'm not even going to apologize for it if it's long. You know, sometimes to talk about books, you just got to talk about books. And sometimes that's, way longer than just a few minutes. So again, I don't know how long it's going to be, but hopefully it's a good in-depth video. And hopefully you guys stick around and watch it, and we can have a discussion about it in the comments. So let's go. Okay, guys. So the deep dive videos that I do, I only have one so far. This will be my second one. It's a book that I really want to take my time and talk about. These are books that I feel, or specifically this book, I definitely feel would be a good book club book because there's just so many things to talk about within this book. Now, I have my notes as usual. And like I've mentioned before, I annotate not all of my books, but some of them I definitely annotate. I'm usually jotting down, some notes on mostly all the books that I read, but I don't annotate in detail on every book. But this one I did. So this is one, this is called The Fourth Child, as I said earlier, by Jessica Winter. It's 352 pages. This was published in 2021, and this is a true literary fiction. And this book is a very slow paced book. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you up front, this was not a favorite of mine. And the reason it wasn't a favorite is because, and this is something that I love about reading and I love about life in general. If, as you grow older, you start to learn more things about yourself, what you like, what you don't like. And the more I read, the more I discover what I like to read. And what I'm finding is that I don't like books with flowery language, very descriptive writing, you know. Um, this book, and I get more into that as we go on, but this is one of those books with the flowery words and language. I just didn't really like that. But with that being said, this book just had so many different topics to talk about. And I definitely am going to try and stick to my notes because otherwise I just kind of go off the rails and start talking about a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm going to try to stay focused and true to my notes here. Okay, so as I said, this book is truly a literary fiction. Okay, it focused on character depth and very complex themes over plot. So it had little mini plots here and there, but when you finish reading this book, you can definitely see. I was going to say you can definitely see the character development, but I don't know if you actually see them develop, or you do see them develop, but what they develop into. Anyway, okay. So the writing style, as I mentioned, very flowery language. And it's used throughout the book, but especially in the beginning. I want to say the first several chapters, it was just a little bit too much for me. And just in case anyone don't know what I mean by flowery language, let me give you an example. Instead of saying the dog crossed the street, you get the noble canine ventured forth, his spirit a beacon against the mundane gray asphalt. That sounds great and all. And if you are a person that love language, maybe you love that type of writing. I don't. I would rather you just say the dog crossed the street. And maybe that's just too basic for some people, but that's what I like. And like I said, that type of language is throughout the book. But again, if you're a lover of words, you will probably love this book. Now, the topic and themes, let me stop. Just in case I didn't say this, but obviously I'm doing a deep dive on this book. It is going to be spoilers. So if you are planning to read this book, please note that this entire video is going to have spoilers because there's no way to do a deep dive without spoiling the book. Okay, so the topic and themes: domestic violence, teen pregnancy, abortion, adoption, faith, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So if you are going to read this book, I would definitely advise you to look up any triggers if you have any prior to reading this. Now, the summary of the book. So we have Jane and Pat who become teenage parents. They get married and have 3 biological children and 1 adopted daughter. Now we watch how they navigate through life for the next few years. And honey, oh my goodness. Okay. Look, let me bring myself back in. All right, so we have 2 main point of views, or the 2 main point of views in this is between Jane and Lauren. Jane is the mom, Lauren is her daughter. So when the book starts, we meet Jane and her parents. Okay. Immediately, I know I'm not going to like Jane's mother. And I know this because Jane's mother was rude. She was a rude, jealous, racist person. Did not like her at all. And we didn't get all of that at once when you first started reading it. They just kind of like Miss Winters kind of give it to you in bits and pieces. But eventually we got there, and I didn't have any room for Jane's father either. He definitely got on my nerves. Now, some examples. Well, again, I don't want to worry about how long the video is, but I don't want to make it extremely long. But there are plenty of examples that I could give you of Jane's mom. And let's see, like the one girl, she will say, that Gita, what is she? And Jane's mother asked, not for the first time, she's asked this several times. And the way that her daughter would respond was so classy. I love how her daughter would respond. And then eventually her mom was like, you know what I mean. But anyway, I could give you several examples of how her mom acted, but we're not going to do that. We're going to move on. Now, we also find out that Jane was a devout Catholic. She was, okay, so in the story, she was rereading the authorless Stories of the Saints book, and to say the content was graphic is putting it mildly. So I'm not a Catholic. I don't know if the Stories of the Saints is actually a real book or not, because it says it was authorless, so that it doesn't have an author. I meant to check it before I started recording and I forgot. But again, I don't know if that is an actual real book, but if it is a real book, oh my goodness, the stories in there are so graphic. And for example, one of the examples that came out of this book was Catherine. Catherine imagined herself married to Christ, his foreskin fashioned into her wedding ring. What? What kind of, okay. And that might be, like I said, this might be a real book or it might have been something in the story. I don't know. The next one says Catherine, the same lady that they're referring to, one of the saints in the book. Um, she, quote unquote, it says, also once sucked pus from a leopard's sore. What? So I really need to know if that's actually a real book. And because some of this stuff was just absolutely outrageous. But again, I do my research on that a little bit later. Now, another example of Jane's mother, and like I said, I did not care for her because she was just a very just rude and mean person. And so Jane at this time, I don't know, she had to be between, I don't know, 16, 17, 18, something like that. I think 16 or 17. And Jane had saved all her money babysitting to go on a trip. And she didn't ask her parents for any money because she was able to save all her money. And her parents, instead of being happy that she was able to do that, I think her mother was just jealous. And, her dad was kind of like, I'm going to go with whatever, your mother says. So I didn't care for him either. But here's an example. So Jane went on a trip. This was a trip to Rome. Okay. She buys a packaged chunk of the Colosseum. When she shows her mother says, that's not real. How many hours did you have to babysit to buy that hunk of crap? Now, even though we know her mom is probably correct and that wasn't actually, a real part of the Colosseum from Rome. It probably was just some dirt that somebody, put in a package to sell to tourists. Who speaks to their 17 or 16-year-old child, even if forget the age, who speaks to their child like that? I mean, she was so proud of what she bought back, and you didn't have to say it to her that way, but that's just kind of the way that the mom was, and I just really just couldn't stand her. Now, Pat, that is Jane's. Oh, I thought I was going to be able to show that. That is Jane's boyfriend. Eventually, he becomes her husband because, like I said, they become teenage parents. But that's her boyfriend. And he was a complete jerk. Okay. When people show you who they are the first time, believe them. Okay. So he showed signs from the start that he had flaws that were only going to get worse with time. And listen to me. I'm not saying that people can't change because people can, but people usually change if they find fault within themselves and they want to, not for other people. Not at least from what I've experienced in life. But um, with Jane's parents being so critical and unloving towards her, I feel like any attention that she got, she was just glad to have it, even if it was negative attention. And that's what Pat gave her. So, example, Pat was two different people, and Jane liked that. For a long time, when he was sweet, he was so sweet. Mostly when they were alone. My dear, this was so he could get what he want from you, you know. Of course, in public, he treated her like crap, but behind closed door, he treated her a different way. If someone's treating you differently, again, it's because it's for their own agenda, and that's exactly what he did. Now, Jane loved how much he loved how skinny she was. He would call her string bean, Mrs. Bone, Fatso, the buttless wonder. Those are not terms of endearment or someone being respectful to you. He is saying those things in a negative manner to her. But again, this is a young girl. Her parents are critical of her. He is like on, like, I think the football team, very popular guy. So saying these things to her, she's just taking them like, oh, they're just term of endearment. They are not. Okay. Now, when he was with his friends, he would turn away, irritated if Jane murmured in his ear, and if she spoke with any intelligence to his slow friends, he would ask her who she was trying to impress. So if she was trying to have an intimate moment with him, by whispering in his ear, he had a problem with that. And if she didn't say something that sounded completely slow and she said something of intelligence, or use certain words that maybe his friends didn't understand, he wants to know, well, who you're trying to impress. Again, these are all signs that this is not the right person for you. Okay. If anybody's treating you like that, they're not the right person for you. Okay. But anyway, but right when she was getting tired of this, and this is key too. But right when she was getting tired of this and feeling embarrassed and thinking about walking away, he knew just what to do. He would hold her hand in public in front of his friends. Young ladies, okay? He was testing boundaries. He was seeing how much he could get away with. And then when he thought, okay, that's probably as far as I can go, she's about to go. Now let me do this. So then they learn, like, oh, okay, well, maybe if I say I'm sorry, or maybe if I, cry, maybe if I do this, not only is he testing the boundaries, he's finding out, okay, how far can I push it and what do I need to do in order to get you to be okay with me again? So I didn't like this young man from the get go. Okay. Okay. So some more examples of the way Pat treated Jane. So now I knew this young lady was making bad decisions, but when she said, with his Letterman jacket draped over my shoulders, she felt the privilege of being owned and being wanted exclusively. He passed over any of the cheerleaders waiting to pair with him. Okay. As I was reading this, in my notes, I wrote, you are setting yourself up for a lifetime of trouble. Is there no one that stands up for this girl? Her self-esteem is crap. As the story goes on, I am right, unfortunately. And I am. First of all, no one owns you. You're your own person. And the fact that he was with you instead of the cheerleaders, there could be a lot of things to that. Maybe he was with the cheerleaders and you just didn't know. But also, he knew he could treat you a certain way that he probably could not treat them, that they probably would not stand for. But again, her parents didn't respect her. Her parents treated her terribly. So, her self esteem is just in the crapper. So, anybody that's showing her any type of attention, it's accepted. Ooh, this book frustrated me, guys. Now, convincing Pat to love her, remember, Pat is the boyfriend that becomes her husband. Convincing Pat to love her and to like her was was hard. Can't read my own handwriting. Was hard, and it was work that was never done. After this statement, we learned that she is pregnant and they are getting married. So we all saw the shotgun wedding coming. So Pat is from a wealthy family. I can't remember. They own some sort of company. So they're quite wealthy. And even though Jane isn't, poor or anything, they don't have money like Pat's family. So the parents made them get married since she was pregnant. But again, this boy didn't love her. She thinks she loves him, but anyway, they had a shotgun wedding. So Pat continued to be an absolute menace to Jane. Okay. The terror he put her through was horrible. When Pat was sweet, he was sweet. But even in the midst of his sweetness, there was the foreshadowing, the menace of when he would not be sweet. So there were always, as she would refer to, two Pats in the room. That is terrible. I mean, how could you ever be comfortable when you're sitting there and you don't know, okay, how long is this person going to be nice? What is going to set them off? When are they going to flip? Like, that is on eggshell all of the time. Couldn't do it. No one should have to live like this. Verbal abuse, physical, and every other abuse that you can think of is absolutely wrong. And 9 times out of 10, it will not get better when you stay in situations like that. that person needs to go get help, and they need to get help on their own. Don't try to be captain. I'm going to save this person, or I'm going to stand by their side and we're going to work through this. Let them work through that on their own. Get themselves together first. And then if you want to try it again, and see what therapists say about that. But most of the time, people like this just don't change. Okay. Now, the first time she thought about running away, and this is Jane. So at this point, she's had a first child. Okay, so the first time she thought about running away was when he hit her in the face with a garbage bag while she was holding their first child, Lauren. First of all, you have no business putting your hands on anyone, and you can't pick up stuff and hit people with it. But not only did you hit her with it, you hit her with it while she was holding her child, your child. Again, this book just, okay. This is another example. Okay, one day Jane could just feel the anger coming off Pat for no reason at all. Nothing had happened, to upset him. She just could feel that anger coming off of him. So she takes Lauren into the backyard and reads to her. As she's coming back to the house, she finds that the door is locked. Pat locks Jane and their daughter Lauren outside for an hour. This man is just evil. He's just evil. Okay. And then when he opens the door, he asks her, well, why are you out here? Why am I out here? Because you locked me and your daughter out there, you. So she's telling herself, don't say anything. Don't say anything. Just don't say anything. But she's angry and says, because you locked us out of the house, you a-hole. Then, as she's halfway through the door, he slams it on her, hitting her shoulder and head while she's holding the baby. Guys, abuse is not okay. It's not okay. But then Jane starts making all kind of excuses, saying he didn't mean to hit her. She was in the way. They both were angry, etc. You know. And I don't know if she was doing it as a coping mechanism. Now, let me tell you, I'm no counselor, so I don't know. These are just my personal opinions and thoughts. But I'm thinking that's why she was doing it, because maybe she just felt like, if I'm going to be in the situation, I have to tell myself something to be okay with this. And I don't know how how much resource how much resources are out there for people who are in situations like this. I don't know. But this is just, people shouldn't have to live like this. And I know this is a book, but I also know that this is real life too. Okay. Now, I know, not from personal experience, I have never personally um, experience like domestic violence with a partner, but I know family members, that have, and I know friends that have. And one of the questions that I have here is, what or which lines have to be crossed before a person is willing to leave this type of situation? And in this case, Jane stated that she wanted Pat to hit her with his hands, because then she would feel justified in taking Lauren and leaving him. Broken skin or broken bone, then it would be Pat who had broken the vow. So, for some people, it could be just you talking to them too crazy, and that's enough for them to leave. But in Jane's situation, he had to physically put his hands on her. That will be what she said will be the reason that she will walk away. So him slamming the door on her, hitting her in the face with a garbage bag. He didn't put his physical hands on her, so that wasn't enough for her to leave. So I guess everybody has their, they draw their lines wherever they draw their lines, which could be different for everyone. Okay. Now, there's a part of the book where Jane notes how she takes pleasure in pain because it relieves the humming in her brain. She will compare it to the pain that the saints might endure. So, you remember earlier where I said there's a book that it didn't have a name of the author on the book, and it was Stories of the Saints. So some of the saints would, and according to this book, would endure painful situation because they were kind of saying like, if, and forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, but they were saying like if Christ could endure the pain, then they would too. And Jane wanted so much to kind of be like the saints that were represented in that book. Now, it made me question. I wonder if she accepted all or most of the things she was going through because she felt it would make her more like the saint. And I definitely believe that to be true. Okay. Now, something I was a little confused about is because, okay, did she plan to get pregnant and now feels guilty? Or was she lying about the intentionally getting pregnant, but needs to herself, she did, I mean, I'm sorry, but needs to herself she did in order to justify staying with Pat. Okay, I don't know what the heck that part of the sentence was, but, but I think what I was trying to say. So, in part of the book, she says that um, she planned to get pregnant. Now, what I was trying to say, and I must have been halfway sleepy when I wrote that, but I think what she was trying to say was because I planned this pregnancy and he didn't know about it, whatever kind of happens because it's my fault. But I was confused because I don't know, like, what did you really intentionally get pregnant? Or did you just happen to get pregnant and you're trying to now come up with a reason to justify it to yourself? I don't know. This is the part where it would be helpful, to have someone else's thoughts because that part I just don't know. Okay. So anyway, at the next point is again, I'm not liking Jane's parents or her sorry husband because at this point they're married, they have one child now. Um, she ends up getting pregnant two more times and they have two more children. Now, you will hope Pat's evil ways would change and he will stop, but no. Why? Because people are who they are and they rarely change unless they want to. So, one day while taking the child out of her high chair, Pat steps on Jane's foot with his muddy work boots on her open toe sandal, and she pretends it doesn't hurt, and he pretends he didn't see her there. And he says to her, first of all, let me pause and let me say that again. This man has on dirty, muddy work boots, okay? And probably steel toe boots. And he intentionally steps on his wife's foot. She's wearing open toe sandals and he steps on her foot. And then he says to her, "Why were you standing so close to me? You're like a dog that's always under my foot." Now, oh, y'all, this book just had me so mad. Oh, this book had me so mad. Now, while he's doing this, they're in a restaurant and she doesn't want to make a scene. She doesn't want to make a scene, even though he's the one that's being evil to her. She knows that if people start to notice it, it would double his anger and that she would have made him do it because she had power over his will. So she knows this man well enough to know that if other people start to notice, even though this is his bad behavior, that he's going to get even more upset with her. And when she says she would have made him do it because she had power over his will. Because when people like him who do evil stuff and they tell you, "Why'd you make me do this?" No, no, no. See, I didn't make you do that because I don't have any power over your will. That was your choice and your decision. But again, they don't take accountability. Y'all, this book, let me tell you, one of the things, and I'm sorry, I said I was going to try to stick to my notes and not kind of go on a rant, but good luck with that. I'm trying my best. One of the things like I said, that I didn't like about the book was the flowery wording and language of it. But if you took that out of this book, all these things, it all these things were a good read because they had me all in my feelings. There is so much to talk about. Like, even when I finish going through these notes, these won't be everything. It's impossible to get it all into one video without the video being like 1,400 hours. That's why I say this is a great, great book to read for a book club. If you guys want to have like a real discussion about it. Okay. Now, okay. So at this point, Jane and Pat have a total of 3 kids. Lauren, the girl, the oldest, and then they have 2 boys. Now, Jane ends up getting pregnant for the 4th time. So she wakes up one morning having a miscarriage. The only thing that Pat could say was, "Were you even going to tell me?" He doesn't say, "Are you okay? Do I need to take you to the hospital?" He sees the blood on the sheet and he was like, "Were you even going to tell me?" Then a month later, he goes and gets a vasectomy and he doesn't bother with telling Jane. Okay. Now remember, Jane is a Catholic and she tells him it's a sin and he could not care less about that. And he didn't tell her because he felt like, you know what? I don't have to tell you anything. We already have enough kids. So, I'm going to just have a vasectomy. Well, who does that? Evil people. Okay. Fast forward. The kids are getting older and Pat is still just as evil as he want to be. Jane joins different charities and different groups. Okay. One is called Respect Life, and that is an anti-abortion group. And at this time, Lauren is in high school. And I believe the other 2 boys, I believe they're very close in age, but they're not in high school yet. So they're like, middle grade or whatever. Now, one day, Jane is watching 2020, which I do not think that comes on anymore, but that was like a news channel back in the days. So it's kind of like what do you call it? Like, I don't want to say like CBS News, but it's like Dateline or, something like that. But anyway, so one day she's watching 2020 and gets a calling, what she feels like is like a heavenly calling, to adopt a Romanian child. Not to say that this wasn't a calling, but I wonder if the miscarriage, him having a vasectomy, and then Jane, something I forgot to mention. Jane was certain that the child that she miscarried with was a girl, and that's important as well. But the fact that all those things happen, I don't know if that didn't just play a role in her wanting the child that she felt that was taken from her, that she lost, versus an actual calling that she got. But I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe, going back again to the book with the stories of the saints, that they would say in that book that they felt like they were getting a calling, like a heavenly calling. So again, I'm not too certain about that part, but again, when stuff happens like that, is it a calling or is it just that's the desire and that's what you want? I don't know. Okay, fast forward again. So we see Lauren, who again, she's a teenager now. She's in high school. we see that she has the ability to lie and not feel bad about it at all. She is quite different from her mother. Okay. Now, her teacher, Mr. Smith, you can tell that he is grooming her. She can't see that, but anybody else, the reader, we can definitely see that he's grooming her. He's not grooming her in the way that you would think a teacher is grooming, but he definitely is. And like he will make like little comments to her, like, you're too mature for them, referring to the other kids that's, in I forget what group they were in. They were, what do you call it? Like the theater kids, the kids that I forget the name. I don't know. But anyway, he would just make it seem like, oh, you're more mature than them and all. She's not any more mature than, the girl next to her or the boy. He just wants her to kind of feel that way again, setting her up, grooming her. Now, Jane, that's the mother, she's gone for about 2 weeks. Okay. She leaves, no one knows where she's going. When she comes back, she has a female child around the age of 3. Okay. So Jane, you just gonna take off and go adopt a child. No one knows that you're going, let alone adopt a child and just bring your child back that's 3 years old. And again, remember, she feels like the child that she lost was a girl. So she feel like the child she lost was a girl, and she feel like there was a calling for her to adopt a Romanian child. And she did so without telling anyone. So Jane has gone and adopted a whole child, didn't tell a soul. And again, who does that? She ends up disrupting everybody's life, her life, Pat's life, her children's life. So one of her sons, Sean and PJ. So she makes Sean move in the room with PJ. Just come home. Hey, I got this 3-year-old child from Romania. I don't speak her language. She doesn't speak mine. I know she's 3, whatever. But, but yeah, now I'm gonna need you to leave your own room and go sleep with your brother. Okay, so she was wrong for that, because to me, whether you're married or in a relationship, you do not make those type of decisions without including your partner. You just don't do that. But I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't mad that she finally paid Pat back. Now I know that's wrong, and you don't do that. I would never suggest anyone do that. But for this man to get just a little bit of a payback for just all the crap that he put her through, I wasn't really mad at it. I wasn't. But this really did hurt Lauren, her daughter. Um, I truly believe Lauren's life would have been different if Jane had never adopted Morella. Okay. And Morella, y'all, Morella, oh my goodness. I don't want to say she was a demon seed, but Morella, y'all, this girl, let me ring it in. Let me ring it in. Okay. So I wanted Jane to leave Pat because he was awful. Okay. I felt sorry for her because of the way her parents treated her and then her husband. But after Morella came into the picture, I started taking some issues with Jane and the neglect she was showing her other kids. The excuses she was giving for Morella's bad behavior was almost too much to take. So not only do you disrupt your own life and Pat life again, Pat whatever, but you disrupt your children's life. And Morella has so many issues And she just required so much of Jane's attention that she really just kind of left Lauren and the other two children, to themselves to kind of really figure out stuff on their own, which was completely unfair to them. And especially with Lauren being a, teenager, she's in high school. Again, she can't really come to you and talk to you because all of your attention is there with Morella, who is, I don't know if she's possessed or not. I don't know what's wrong with this child. Like, she is. Anyway, so you leave Lauren open, and now she got this teacher who is just grooming her, and she's not coming to talk to you about it because she doesn't really even know that that's happening to her. Okay, let me try to get back to these notes because again, I'm going off on a tangent. All right, so Morella was absolutely awful, like horrible. I don't even have the words to describe how awful she was. Okay. Now I understand her way of being was probably due to trauma. So she definitely needed help, but I could understand why people didn't want to be around her. Okay. She would grab anything in anyone's hand at any moment. She would scream all the time and she would absolutely destroy everything. And it was purposefully. It wasn't just, oh, she's just acting out here and there. You guys will really have to read this book to understand how horrible Marilla was. And again, I'm certain that the issue she had probably definitely had everything to do with the way she grew up or the trauma that she experienced, which for her, I'm sorry that she went through that. But this was a child that needed help immediately. And Jane she did not get help for this child immediately. She just didn't. Okay. Now, I have here, Jane really made me mad when she wouldn't leave Morella at home for the opening night of Lauren's play. She knew Morella would be extremely disruptive, didn't care. This was another selfish act. So Lauren got like the star, she was like the lead in the play, like the star of the play, and this was her very first play. Now, again, she got that lead role because her teacher was grooming her, even though we didn't exactly know that at the time, but he was grooming her. But anyway, this was her first play. She was going to be the lead, and Morella is an absolute menace. So she should not, in my opinion, have come to the play. But her mother, which is Jane insisted that, okay, she's part of the family. We're not going to leave her out. Da, da, da. I'm not saying she's not part of the family, but when you know how she behaved, and this is Lauren's first role in, not only just first role in a play, but she is the lead. You should be able to give her that attention that she needs. But of course, she doesn't. And to me, I felt like this was just another selfish act of Jane. Okay. But not only is Jane, um, being selfish, in my opinion, by bringing that child to the play, her son, Sean, is now regressing. Okay. Jane noticed this. She even said specifically that he's regressing, but she did nothing to help him. So I forget how old he was, but he's old enough. Like I say, he's in middle school. I believe he's in middle. No, he's definitely in middle school. Um, you take him from, this used to be, your room or whatever. Now I'm going to go make you sleep here with your brother. And you can see that he's having issue after issue and you do nothing. I mean, this is a child who's now starting to wet himself again. And he's of an age that there's no way he should be doing that. But again, Marilla is the only one that you're paying attention to, even though you're not giving her the professional help that she needs. Now, with that being said, there wasn't a lot of discussion with the two boys. Lauren was a child that they focused on, and we got mostly her point of view as far as the child goes. Um, So really, I mean, the book, we didn't really have to have, the two boys in there because they really played a small role. But um, the point is, you didn't help your son. You just kind of left him out there. Now, okay, so after the play, okay, so after this, we have, I'm sorry, not only after, we have definitely got to see how bad Marilla is and how much help this child needs. And maybe I shouldn't use the word that she's bad, but I felt that way. I felt that way. But you could definitely see that she needed some help. So if I wasn't already done with her, and I'm sorry, I was absolutely done with Marilla. The way she acted at Lauren's birthday party was horrible. Okay. And I'm sitting there, as a reader, I'm looking at Jane like, you need to get this girl some professional help. Okay. Marilla was knocking plates out of people's hands, kicking the people. Like you couldn't open a gift without Lauren couldn't open a gift without her snatching it. And it was like just everything was just so purposeful for her. It's like if you were showing attention to person A, then Marilla was going to come over there to person A and just have a fit. If you go over there to person C, then she was going to person C. And again, I'm not, a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm pretty certain that they could break down that this is why, and they did that in the book when she finally got some help. They broke that stuff down. And it's like, dude, you don't have to be a professional to know that this girl needed some help because again, she was absolutely awful. I'm not saying she didn't have a reason to be awful based upon her trauma. I'm just noting that she was awful and that she needed some professional help from the beginning. Now, finally, Jane takes Marilla to get some professional help. And I did enjoy learning some of the things from the doctor, like what is attachment, who is the unattached child, etc. They did kind of break the stuff down, and I'm assuming that that stuff was like accurate. I can't see why the author would put that in the book if it wasn't, because I know a lot of authors do like their research on certain subject matters when they're writing books. So I would assume that that stuff was correct. Okay. Now, moving on, Lauren, the daughter, and Mr. Smith, the teacher, they have relations. I knew this was going to happen because he was grooming her the entire time. But y'all, okay. So before I say this, let me back up because I don't know if I put this in the notes below, so I may repeat it, but let me back up. Like I said, this book had just so much stuff to talk about. You remember I told you that Jane joined like some different organizations. One was an anti-abortion one. Jane was all just, we don't do that. We're anti-abortion, blah, 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 just standing firm. And some of one of the scenes that they had at the protest, child, it was too much. It was too much. It was too much. But anyway, I bring that up to say, again, Lauren and Mrs. Smith have relation. Well, Lauren becomes pregnant by Mr. Smith. Okay. Now that's not surprising. She's not on any type of birth control pill. They're Catholic, and from my understanding, and I could be wrong, I am absolutely not Catholic, so I don't know, what the rules or whatever are, but I believe that they don't take birth control, or at least in this book, I know Lauren didn't take any. And even though her friends were taking birth control, she was not. So I wasn't surprised that, she being with this, man, she got pregnant. Okay. Now, so now Jane is focusing only on Marilla, and they're out of town somewhere. I can't remember. They're like an hour or 2 hour somewhere getting therapy. Okay. So she has no idea of what is going on with her other children. And, you know, the children are lost. Lauren has gotten pregnant. Sean is regressing. The Pat is just checked out, which in his case, being checked out probably was better because otherwise he was doing nothing but abusing Jane. So everything is just a hot mess at this point. Okay. Now, Jane ends up bringing Pat. No, I'm sorry. Jane had Pat bring Morella to one of the protests. So now we don't kind of fast forward. I'm sorry. We fast forward on. Now, Jane, she has her husband bring this child to the protest, and this is one of these anti-abortion protests. And she lets Morella kind of run away, and Morella gets away from her twice. Okay. Now I started to question if Jane was hoping that something would happen to Morella. Okay. And I hate to have wondered that, but it's like, okay, this is a rambunctious child. So I don't know if I mentioned, but one thing that Morella would do when she would meet absolute strangers is to run up to them. She would either run up to them and attack them or run up to them and just like, accept me, like pick me up and, that kind of stuff. Just stuff that most children would not do, Morella would do. And when Jane let her go twice, and they're at these anti-abortion rallies that is heated, people are emotional, people are very opinionated, and it's just not an environment where a child will come in. I was wondering, like, girl, are you trying to set it up where this child? Okay. But nothing happens to Morella at these events. But I was wondering just for a moment if I'm just saying. Okay. So again, remember I said that Lauren got pregnant. So we have Jane. Remember, Jane is this devout Catholic anti-abortionist. When she learns her daughter is pregnant, what does she do? She tells Lauren, you have a choice. What a hypocrite. What? Now, all this time, you are like the saints do it like this. I'm trying to do it like this. They even she took up issues with a lot of stuff. But as soon as you find out that your daughter is pregnant, now you want to tell her that she has a choice? What? You said that there was no choice. You said what it was. So, what little respect that I had for Jane completely went out the window. If you're going to say this is what you believe in on Monday, then you believe that same thing on Wednesday. Okay? I was, I was so outdone with her. Okay? And then what made matters just even worse to me is that Lauren never told her mother who the father was, but Jane figures it out. And when she learns that Mr. Smith is the father, she does absolutely nothing. She doesn't tell the husband. She doesn't report this man. She doesn't try to get this man arrested. She does absolutely nothing. Y'all, y'all, so let me move on. Okay. Ooh, hold on. Okay. So now we get towards the end of the book, and Morella, she can talk and she uses full sentences, and I'm thinking therapy has helped her because I didn't mention this part. Morella was struggling with language. She was struggling. She was 3 when she was adopted, but she was struggling with language, and she would not use full sentences. She was just kind of, you know, just yell out these just, little bursts of things here and there. It just, you know, wasn't full sentences. So after the therapy treatment, she got it. And I'm thinking, and we skip, and I forget like how many years, but it's like she's no longer a child. It's several years later. But when you hear her thoughts and what she's thinking, I'm like, this child's going to need help for the rest of her life, because I'm not too certain that she ain't going to do something to harm Jane and the rest of them. Like, she, that child is questionable. She is absolutely questionable. Again, the story doesn't say what happened to her, but it has really affected her, and she's just not right. Okay? Just, mm-mm. Now, that's the book in a nutshell. I've left a lot of stuff out because there's just no way that I could get through this in one video without the video being several hours long. This is not a book that I personally plan on reading again, but I am so glad that I read it. Okay. The only reason that I say I don't plan to read this book again is because I don't like flowery language in a book. Okay. That's just not for me. It turns me off. But I'm glad that that was mostly in the beginning of the book, and not, even though it was throughout the book, it wasn't as heavy as it was in the first couple of chapters. Okay. Now, the ending of this book, it wasn't like it wasn't like closed. It was definitely an open-ended book. There were some questions left about, okay, wait a minute, you know, what's going to happen with this? What's going to happen with that? So if you're someone that likes everything to be wrapped up completely when a book ends, this you may not like. Okay. Um, let's see what else I have here in my notes. Yeah, I just have here that I didn't like how, to me, it just, the ending was like this. I didn't like that. To me, I would have liked to have known or seen more of Morella, the changes within her within those years. Because, like I said, it went from her being like 3 years old to, I don't know, she had to be probably like 10 or 12 or something. And I could be off by the number. I don't think the book specifically said numbers, but definitely, um, it was definitely a stretch. So I would have liked that better, wrapped up a little bit better. Okay. Now, I have here that I think this book may be difficult for people to read due to the writing style, which I've mentioned 100 times, and not the different themes, even though they were deep. Because a lot of books talk about, some of the same issues that were in here, but again, it's a lot, and the author doesn't shy away from them when she talks about it. And again, the scene that they had at that rally was just, it was insane. I actually had to go look up that specific scene, and I won't say what it was, but it absolutely was something that took place. The things that people do to make their point sometimes is just absolutely outrageous. Okay. But as I said earlier, if you are a lover of words, if you like poetic writing, if you like, flowery writing, if you like that type, you will love this book. Okay. Now, I do really enjoy that this book caused me to ask so many questions. Like I said, I have a few pages here, but I could have had, pages after pages after pages of questions, because there's so much to talk about in this book here. Now, I am going to, which I intended to do before I started recording and I forgot, but I do plan to go back. Like I said, I want to find out if that book about the saints is an actual book, or is that something that the author just kind of made up? Because if it is, I have got to read it, because the things that they were saying, and I only gave you guys like 2 examples, some of the stuff that she was saying, it was so extreme. It was like, are you serious? Like, are you serious? So I am going to go back and look that up. But anyway, whew, let's take a moment and breathe. So guys, that is the end of this video. I hope that you guys have really enjoyed this deep dive. I know that I have. Again, I didn't get to everything that was in this book. I think that I think it's a really good book to read, and you might not want to, read it again after you have read it, because maybe it's just like, oh my gosh, this is too much. But I definitely think that it was worth the read. I'm glad that I picked this book up. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. So that's it. I'm done rambling. Thank you guys so much. As usual, I appreciate you, and I want something from you. I would love it if you guys would like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to see y'all and talk with you about books, and more books. Bye.